Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar this afternoon. Today we have our second webinar in the Unpacking 3D Experience series, where Mike Craffey will discuss how to use 3DSWYM as your OCM tool. Mike is our Dassault execution team lead and resident 3D experience expert, and recently just gave this presentation at CO a few weeks ago. Before I hand it over to Mike, just a few housekeeping notes. This presentation is being recorded and will be emailed to all registrants within the next couple of days. We will take questions at the end of the webinar, but please enter any questions that you have as they occur to you in the questions panel on the GoToWebinar tool, and then we can get to those at the very end. With that, I will hand it over to Mike.
All right, thank you, Jen. Welcome, everyone. We're going to have a little fun this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're at. And really, we're going to start out just talking about organizational change and why it's interesting to me and Razor Leap in general, using 3DSWYM as an organizational change tool, as Jen mentioned, or hub. There is a technical details section there, but we're probably not going to get in too deeply there. I don't want it to go too long. And applying the OCM principles using 3DSWYM will be the sort of the wrap up. So organizational change. So, why? I mean, I work on this belief that if you're a manufacturing company and you make a thing, your company's in business, you design, develop, manufacture, ship, repair, service, whatever, a product, your company already practices PLM. And you can argue whether or not you're using a PLM system to manage your product lifecycle management, but you're doing it. You don't really have a choice. And generally speaking, lots of companies probably have a hybrid approach where they, depending on what process they're talking about, some of that exists in a piece of software, some of it, it exists in Excel spreadsheets or whatever. But it's a combination of technologies and automations and processes, manual processes, and the reason that I bring that up, and the reason why I think it's important, is because when you're talking about organizational change, or you want to make a big change, especially if you're trying to apply technology within that change, it's important to recognize that your business process, goes from end to end. It's really, not a siloed activity. Your business processes overlap, and people touch many parts of your business process. So, many deployments get sort of tripped up due to an overlooked system. So they get into the deployment and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. So again, that's one of the things that makes organizational change sort of tricky. So there are lots of different types of organizational change and different ways to go at it, either at an organizational level or as a strategy, or, you're targeting people. But, no matter what the category of change you're going through, it will generally impact the entire organization or the organization strategy. It will certainly impact the people that are involved, and they'll very likely be some upheaval that you'll have to manage or address. The image that you see here is provided by changeactivation.com if you're interested. So what are some of the challenges of organizational change? We run into this quite a bit, but so along the right side there is, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So, the challenges of organizational change are certainly overlooked or maybe minimized. And, just a few short years ago, our customers did not formally acknowledge, sort of the need for OCM. And today it's really front of mind for a lot of organizations when we talk with them about, doing a deployment or an upgrade or something. And many of those companies are thinking about it because, there are a lot more people who have lived through sort of a failed deployment or, a very difficult enterprise rollout. And, the need for and addressing organizational change has become apparent. And so getting people on board and sort of getting them on the same page and, getting everything pointed in the right direction can often, smooth out a bumpy road. And getting people comfortable with a coming change will create the motivation or the desire for the change. So change can be a positive thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, although, lots of people, kind of cringe at change, especially, if you're comfortable doing, performing your job in a certain way, it can be scary. And so having timely and good information will foster good or better communication and sort of limit speculation or guessing. So, when people don't know what's coming, they'll speculate, and often they'll recklessly speculate on what's happening. So having a clear understanding of the change and knowing there is support available before, during, and after the change will go a long way to making people more comfortable with that change, and then providing a community where all these things can come together with peers and leaders. Sort of puts everybody in the same boat with a shared responsibility and a community, and that's really sort of the heart of this topic of using 3DSWYM as your OCM hub. So I want you to keep this slide in mind later on. So this is a general slide with some of the elements of OCM. So later, when we talk about, after we go through the demonstration of 3DSWYM, and I come back and say, okay, now let's look at how we apply the elements of OCM or 3DSWYM to the elements of OCM, this will become apparent. So, with that, I haven't said anything about 3DSWYM, but you'll see, that many of the features of 3DSWYM align well with the OCM topics we've discussed and the elements that you see here on the screen. There are some elements to all organizational change that should be enabled to overcome the challenges. Most of the elements address the things people care about or struggle with when it comes to organizational change. Communication and access to content or access to information is probably one of the biggest, have the significant impact to adoption and sentiment, controlling sentiment. And likewise, lack of communication and information and learning will negatively affect the very people being asked to change. So, having a place where people can go and find information, collaborate, commiserate, being able to measure their sentiment is a good idea, and actually might help you, sort of do some course corrections rather than, hey, we rolled it out, now go. So having a place to gather that information would be sort of a good idea. So let's sort of dive in, and I'm going to sort of set this up. I'm going to be using 4 different browsers for sort of 4 different people or personnel or personas, as it were. And so the reason that I've sort of titled this as a novel approach is that 3DSWYM reveals the power of communities and conversations to share and innovate throughout internal and or external ecosystems. We're going to be focused mainly on internal, but it can be, you can have people come in, vendors, suppliers, or whatever, into this ecosystem as well. And it leads your company to be sort of more agile and innovative by providing, sort of intuitive content creation tools and social interaction. So 3DSWYM is sort of a social platform for 3DSWYM for 3D experience. And the way I like to describe 3DSWYM is it's an informal and unstructured aspect of 3D experience. And whereas the 3D experience side, or the 3D space side, or the Innovia side, is more formal and more structured. So there's a sort of a place for all these things. So 3DSWYM as a application of 3D experience provides the following key capabilities. So you can create and join communities where you can learn from others. It can be sort of a domain or an activity, or some sort of an event that can drive a community, or it could be part of your new product development, those sorts of things. You can engage users with social contributions, like posting. Posting ideas, videos, pictures, questions, so on and so forth. We'll go through all these in detail. And you can manage your profile information so that you can connect with other people. So it has all the same sorts of things that you'd expect to find in a social platform. So so why is 3DSWYM sort of novel? Well, if you've deployed 3D experience, 3DSWYM's there, and everybody has an IFW license, so it's available. If you take advantage, at least from my perspective, if you take advantage of 3DSWYM, you could minimize the spread of information, so there's not information all over the place. And hey, try something new. It might be useful. So the first part of the demonstration is to look at profile management, and I'm going to jump over to my Brave browser, and this is a user called Razorleaf Designer. And so you have a sorry, you can see my browser screen, right, Jen? Jen?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I was muted.
All right. Okay. So this is the profile page, and you can hover on this eye here, and it'll tell you, what kind of scoring you have. But principally, it's like, hey, what kind of skills do you have, and do you speak different languages, and do you have specific education or an experience or something like that. And this, if you have a large organization, or if you have a distributed organization where lots of people are away from each other and can't be really super connected to each other, this is a way for you to be able to connect with other people. And so that's where the network comes in play, and it'll actually ask people you may know. And this list is driven by interaction in SWYM and other places where you may have been connected to somebody in a conversation or something like that. But you can also add a contact, and you can search for users and things of that nature to find out about them. So that's just a little bit about profile management. So conversation management, this is really simply what you think it is. So interacting with somebody in a conversation is a little bit different than communities. So we'll take a look at this real quick. Here I'm going to go back to I'm going to go to my conversations, and you can see I started a conversation. Razorleaf engineer asked me, what do you think about a new design for a time travel machine? And I said, hey, I think we need to, brainstorm with R&D. And Razorleaf Engineer is going to be under, so Razorleaf Engineer sees this conversation and he can say, yep, thumbs up, sounds like a good idea. We should loop in at manager. So I can loop in another user, and so you'll get notifications all over the place about like things that are occurring. And Razorleaf Manager is in Chrome, and so Razorleaf Managers, I better refresh this. Okay. All right, that should have popped up, but it did not. So I'm going to move on from there. And these conversations are not sort of limited to, you know, just sort of this interaction. You can post a message or just create a post, or you could post videos or pictures or whatnot. So content management, there is lots of content that can be generated by, you know, authors or contributors in a swim community. So posts, ideas, questions, media, surveys, wiki pages, we-dos, and messages. So I just have a special note about we-dos because this question came up at Co. If you're using the cloud instance of the platform, and I'm talking about Dassault's public cloud, we-dos are part of that environment, and it has to do with a tangential capability called Planner, and so those two things are closely coupled together. In the on-premises deployment of 3DSWYM, the we-do will actually be available in the menu, but it won't go anywhere. So they're aware of this, and they're going to be correcting the documentation and even the interface, so it doesn't pop up. But content-wise, you know, I think some of the things that are a little bit compelling are being able to ask questions of your fellow colleagues. If you're, you know, someone who's trying to figure out what kind of sentiment is out there, you can create surveys. You could think of them as sort of Survey Monkey type things, but it's pretty easy to use, and the platform will maintain the analytics behind there and let you see what the scoring's like. A wiki is exactly what you think it is, just, you know, some pages and things like instructions, and I have some samples of that. A post is simply a blog article, and then the we just got done talking about. So I'm going to jump over to Opera, and we're going to go back to my communities and back to OCM Hub, and you can have a number of communities here. I will mention something about the conversations. A conversation, if it gets enough momentum, you might want to actually convert it to a community. So conversations can be matured into communities. So in my hub here, if I click on the plus sign, you can see the different things you can generate. I'll tell you that the things that are sort of interesting to me, we talked about surveys and being able to create a survey. You just simply add questions, tell it what kind of thing you're doing, and away you go, and you have your survey. Most of the things that you see here on the screen already are just things that were generated. If I go over and look at the wiki, I can see, that I've created a number of wiki pages, and I can see, hey, what do we do with, XCAD connector installation? And so this is just really an installation on how to do the an instruction on how to do the installation. And so you can see I just captured some screens and put it in here. And it's a fairly robust editor in terms of being able to put sort of some HTML formatting in here and add tables and just about anything you'd want to do. It's not as powerful as OneNote, but it's all on the platform and connected. This page here basically is an example of making a structured list of links. So you have people creating content, and then you could create a wiki page where you could force an order for people to follow their instructions. I will mention related to the other postings. Come on. So here's an example of a question. I've been asked to install blah, blah, blah. And so in my response, the Razor Leaf engineer responded to the designer with a link to a wiki page. And so that user can do their thing with the question. And then they could actually go to their question, and they can actually state that this is my question. I can validate the answer. So once this is validated, then so there could be a number of different responses, and then this person, the author of the question, can actually validate the answer. And so anybody who reads this in the future would be able to follow it. This is what I wanted to talk about, ideas. So this is our time travel idea. And we're just going to put it in here, and we're going to publish it. And so the ideas will have, and this is configurable, they have a maturity level. So they go through a new idea and a concept and a project plan and matures. But as people add information to the time travel idea, those ideas can be voted on, and the ideation map will have large bubbles or small bubbles or whatever, and then eventually the new idea can actually be matured and sent over to 3D space or into the platform, as it were. All right, so community management. So you can basically control who can create communities and who can belong to communities. Probably the one that's most interesting, I'm going to go over to platform admin. You can control who the managers are. So if you have a person who's responsible for, say, creating a new community, but they're not really going to be the manager of the community, you can sort of delegate that to another person or a number of people. You can actually, sorry, let's go to here and look at these settings, the OCM Hub community, there is a main owner called Admin Platform, and I can choose another owner if I wish. And the communities can be public or private or secret. And there's a separate setting for external collaborators. So if somebody's, an external user like a vendor or supplier, if they have access, this community is secret, or I can make it public or private. And then you can control which features are available. Not every community should have all the features. Maybe you have a community that's only comprised of wikis. And the statistics on the community you can control who has access to the statistics. And then this happens to be the ideation funnel that we just described. Viewing the statistics, you can see that there's, Razor Leaf engineers visited so many times, and number of users per role, and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of data here that you can actually take advantage of. So by by leveraging all of the features of 3DSWYM, you could have quite a nice organizational change management hub. So I mentioned earlier this slide about applying OCM to SWYM, and those elements of OCM: communications, educational content, training content, adoption, and sentiment measurement, and the central hub, the project war room, are essentially a part of 3DSWYM. So communications, as an OCM element, you could start a conversation, you could write a post to communicate on a particular topic or subject, and you can post a question to the group. Educational content, posting videos, creating a wiki, posting instructions, just about anything you can think of from an education information type perspective is available in 3DSWYM. Again, like educational content, the training content, which is more specific to some function of the platform or some aspect of your business transformation, could include videos or PowerPoints or PDF instructions or whatever it happens to be. And I should mention it can be targeted at specific people. We talked about a little bit about adoption and sentiment measurement, being able to find out early how people are feeling about something related to change is probably more beneficial than finding out too late. And not only can you do the sentiment gathering, you can use the 3DSWYM metrics to actually to look at some of that data. And ultimately, this leads to bringing all your people together, sort of in a common place, sort of keep them up to date. And Jonathan Scott, one of he's our chief solution architect, he called it a digital campfire, sort of a place where everybody can sort of gather. So keep in mind, if you've deployed 3DEXPERIENCE platform, 3DSWYM is there, and it's amazing to me how many customers we go to that say, you ask the average user, do you know what 3DSWYM is? And they'd be like, I don't know what that is. So it's there, and you can take advantage of it. And as I said, jump in, the water's fine. At this point, I'm going to now pause and take some questions. Jen, did any questions come up?
Yes, yes. And I wanted to say, like, thanks for giving us that presentation, Mike. It's, we all use so many communication tools on a daily basis, and I can see where living inside the platform having, allows you to not just keep those handy, but track them and, refer back to them and optimize company communication. A couple of questions that we had is on the on this on the topic of communities. Is there a possibility of like reusing a community? For example, replicating the community or content in another tenant.
Oh, well, that's a good question. I don't know. I know. Well, let me do it. Let me do it this way. I'm not going to guess. So one of the things you can do in a community is, I think you have to do it from the community. There is a way to export media, but I don't know of exporting a whole community. I'm going to make a note of that.
Okay, so maybe something that we can, and because anything to the audience in general, any questions that we can't answer today, we can certainly follow up with you directly and provide you with the answers. I don't know if we're giving a prize for stumping the expert, but that's something to consider.
Well, that's the first time I've heard that. I mean, every time I do this presentation, I get some other, question, like the we do one, like, oh, I thought that was there, but it's not.
All right. So, and I guess I'll follow on to that really was, and it may be the same question, how to export or import a community, or do you only create them?
Yeah, at this point, we only create them.
Okay. One other question was, does 3DSWYM also work with Smart Team, and or is it part of the essential Smart Team package? Or is this only in 3DEXPERIENCE?
Yeah, it's only 3DEXPERIENCE. It is earlier in the agenda, there was a technical component. 3DSWYM is its own application, has its own database, has its own application server. And so the 3DEXPERIENCE platform is a collection of applications, of which 3DSWYM is one, and it's got its own database. So no, there's no direct connection to Smart Team. Although, depending on how you're using Smart Team, you could link, things from 3DSWYM into Smart Team if all you're trying to do is, get to content from Smart Team. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot about Smart Team too, but as far as I know, they're not connected in any way.
Okay, then on the topic of content in general, how do you search for content?
Yeah, so let me just switch over to Brave. And we'll go to Opera. So being able to search for content, you can actually just use, this is just the full text search that's available, in the platform. And so it will have, as you can see, the results. There's one. And so these are both SWYM content, and this is an actual user that had CATIA in its profile. Okay. So we're just taking advantage of full text search, and it searches across 3D Space and 3DSWYM. So they get matched together in one search. But yeah, you can use search, and you can pretty much find content, and then you can sort it if you wanted to by looking at there's one question, there's one wiki page, and there's one person. Okay. So you can, it's a Google-like search.
Okay, and then can you, still on the subject of content, can you add either effectivity or expiration dates on content?
Yeah, this has come up. This came up at Co, and it came up in another one. And I was digging into that, and I thought I had an answer to this, and I can't find my way back to it. But I think there is a function or a feature that expires content, and that's one of the questions that came up that I thought I had an answer to, but I don't right now. But I will follow up on that in the responses.
Okay. Back to the community. In the community settings, there's an area for registering tags. What is the main purpose of tags in a community?
That's a good question. In the community, I don't know where tags were. I know you can do things with Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where we saw tags. But I'll make a note of that.
Okay. I mean, it seems like the search engine seems pretty powerful. So regardless of how it's organized, it seems like you can almost always access information.
Well, right. I mean, that's what my mind was telling me. If you're doing searches, you can create tags within the search. So the tagging enables you to go back to a search more easily. But that's part of search in general. It's not part of SWYM. So I'll take a look at if there are tags within SWYM. But tags within searching enables you to be able to filter your searches more effectively.
Okay, I think so the individual is asking you basically is open the 3DSWYM widget and access setting from community features.
Okay. So 3DSWYM. Community.
Upper right side. I'm just passing along directions at this point.
I don't see that.
Well, maybe this is one of those conversations we'll have to take offline then.
Yeah.
Okay, right now that's all of the questions that we have. So I don't know if you want to.
There was another question that had come up that people had asked at Co was, being able to organize video content or being able to organize, content in general. And there is, if I look at, let's just go to the wiki, for instance. I can actually say, oh, I can put this into a bookmark. And so now when I come into my into the 3DSWYM, there'll be this sort of bookmark area that will enable you to, or it's supposed to be right here. So you can use the bookmarks to organize your data in a particular way. So you have this sort of unstructured timeline here. This is sort by creation date. So, you can sort it in whatever way you'd like to see it. And then using bookmarks, you can actually organize the data in a whatever way you want, or have your favorite stuff in your bookmarks area. That's a better way to deal with the unstructured aspect of 3DSWYM. But I'll include that question in the questions to be responded to.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Not at this point.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for coming in. And if you have any questions, just let us know.
If you want to put up our last slide, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So we do have a couple, actually, upcoming is a little bit of a misnomer here in that we do have individuals down at PIDX right now. So if you happen to be in Atlanta, you still have a few hours to catch them. And our next webinar, on unpacking the 3D experience, is walking through the digital design process, and that is currently scheduled for August 22nd. So hopefully we would like to thank you all for your time this afternoon, Razorleaf, and thanks a lot, guys.